Hello and welcome back to the end of another video. Today we're going to be going over your forecast as well as the next snowstorm. This video has been broken up into two parts. The first one is your forecast in depth, and the second one is the topic of the day. So if you want to skip your forecast and go straight to the topic of the day, timestamps are in the description. So let's get started here with the National Weather Service. So on the National Weather Service page, we're going to be looking at the alerts currently issued by the National Weather Service. We still have winter storm warnings for Winter Storm Eartha, but those are starting to lighten up, and by the time you're watching this video, they should be pretty minimal. We also have some air stagnation advisories in the west, well, specifically the northwest. Red flag warnings in the southwest, specifically the Los Angeles, San Diego area. But that's about it. So let's move on to your forecast. So here is the northeast forecast. Right here we can see that at 5 a.m. we start to see Eartha kind of moving out here as we move on throughout the day. Kind of just Maine here, maybe a few showers in northern New Hampshire and Vermont. But overall, it should be moving out, giving most of the region a pretty dry day. But parts of the southern mid-Atlantic, including Virginia, maybe a little bit of Maryland and Delaware, could see some rain and snow showers from a system that's going to be moving off the coast here. But we could see a little bit of a clipper system going into Monday here, but yeah, that moves off the coast, and that's about it. So let's go to thermodynamics. So throughout the day today, you could see lows in some of the major population centers below freezing, including areas like DC, Philadelphia, New York City, and Boston. Certain areas like eastern Long Island, the Cape, the down east Maine, very down east Maine, and then areas in southern Jersey, Delaware, southeastern Maryland, as well as all but the upper elevations of Virginia being above freezing for those lows. Now, as the day warms up, not much warming up in total. Pretty much kind of stationary here, but you could see some areas by the coastlines, including Boston, Providence, Rhode Island, Hartford, Connecticut, Bridgeport, Connecticut, maybe even areas up into the Housatonic Valley, maybe even Albany possibly getting above freezing, New York getting above freezing, as well as Philadelphia, Baltimore, DC, and of course areas that were already above freezing for the lows continue to stay above freezing. Some areas in the very interior parts of New York could see teens, 20s, as well as some areas of interior Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont. But otherwise should be staying in the upper 20s to low 30s for your high temperatures if you are below freezing. If you're above freezing, you could see up to 40-45 degrees. Now let's move on here to the southeast forecast. So here at 5 a.m. you can see that we have some moisture here moving through the Gulf, as well as Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama. That continues to move through the region throughout the day, mostly impacting Florida though, with some pretty heavy thunderstorms near the Miami area, but that eventually moves off the coast. But some areas of South Carolina and North Carolina could see some rain and snow showers after that. So that is about it. After that all moves through, you get a much clearer day going into, that would be Tuesday. So let's move on to the temperatures. So your lows for the day, southern Florida, you are going to be pretty toasty for the year in the upper 60s into the 70s. But once you get past Lake Okeechobee, you get into those 40s and 50s pretty much across the entire very southeast region, including central and northern Florida, southern Georgia, Alabama, southeast Mississippi, most of Louisiana and Texas, eastern Texas. But when you get further north here, including Arkansas, northern Mississippi, Alabama, and Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, and we'll talk about even lower temperatures in a minute. You get into the low 40s, high 30s, but in some higher elevations, as well as parts of the Ohio River Valley and Tennessee River Valleys, you could see some highs or some lows below freezing. Now, if you go to the high temperatures for the day, Florida almost in the 80s, pretty much the same areas that got those very high temperatures for the lows, you're going to see 60s or higher for your high. In the areas that had the high 30s, low 40s, you're now in the low 40s, the upper 40s to low 50s, and some areas that started below freezing, you're pretty toasty here. Some spots getting from below freezing to the mid 50s. But that's about it. Let's move on to the north central. So we have a pretty calm day here in the northern plains and Great Lakes. Maybe a few snow showers, but that is about it. We can also see a warming trend starting to come in here, and we'll talk about that more when we get to the topic of the day. But in terms of thermodynamics, we can see that everything kind of starts off pretty chilly here. Most of the area below freezing, but very few spots in the Ohio River Valley and Mississippi River Valley being above freezing. But as you warm up, you could see some areas in the western plains here getting into the 40s and 50s. Most of the Great Lakes region staying in the 30s to low 40s, or even staying below freezing all day. Now, let's move on here to the South Central. So for the South Central, you can see that system moving off there in Louisiana, but overall, very dry. And let's just move on to those thermodynamics. So we're going to go back here. Low temperatures. Could see some low temperatures in Texas and Oklahoma, as well as New Mexico, below freezing, but once you get to eastern Texas and western Louisiana, you get into the 40s and 50s for lows. For high temperatures, we could be pretty toasty here in southern Texas in the 60s, but overall, I'd say upper 40s to low 50s for highs across most of the region. Now let's move on to the west. So we're going to do the western U.S. in pretty much one go here because there's not much going on in the southwest. So we have this system moving on here in the northwest. This is going into Monday. That could bring some rain to the Seattle area and eventually down to Portland. But really not much going on for the southwest except for this looks like a cutoff low here that's moving off the coast. Now, in terms of thermodynamics, we could see here, if this could load, that would be nice. Alright, so for your lows, you can see in the upper elevations, and other than the west coast and the desert, mostly below freezing. But once you get into the high temperatures of the day, you can see most of the area stays above freezing, but those higher elevation areas stay in the 30s. The southwest in general should be pretty toasty here with 60s and 70s across the region. So that's all I have for your forecast. Now let's move on to the topic of the day. So we are on pivotal weather here, and we're going to be taking a look at the GFS, as this storm that could be happening here in the plains could pack a little bit of a punch. So let's move on here to the forecast So you can see here, you have those two systems, one being Eartha, the other one being that little bit of rain. But you have this cutoff low that moves into Mexico, pulls up some Pacific moisture, develops a low, and then it kind of weakens a little bit. But then once it gets that Gulf moisture, it strengthens yet again, and we start to see some snow getting generated here from Kansas into Wisconsin. Now, this system seems to remain east of, if I could find it again, seems to remain east of the Twin Cities, which is one of the wild cards with this storm, the other one being Milwaukee. So, very thin area of snowfall, but then afterwards, we could see that a much stronger system that kind of dives deeper into the south develops here, and that maintains snowfall through into the Great Lakes and even into the Northeast as it moves off, and it seems very powerful. But yeah, that's about it. Let's look at snow totals. So after 384 hours, which is a while, we can see that strip of snow, and it could be multiple strips of snow, possibly, remains through this area of the plains. So let's take a look at that system here. Is this 24 hours snow totals? No, it's not. Okay, good. So we can see here up to 10 inches of snow from Iowa to Michigan, the UP in Michigan, in fact. So that's about it for this storm system. What about the next storm system? So you can see in Oklahoma, we could see up to 4 inches. But once you get into the Mississippi, Missouri, Ohio River valleys, most specifically the Ohio River Valley and the Great Lakes region, we could see areas of 3 to 5 inches here from Missouri and into Canada, but other than that, there's not much. So there's 2 minor snowstorms that could pack a little bit of a punch. Would either of them be named? I don't know. I think it's a little too early to make that for sure. But yeah,